Hi, it's Tuesday morning, February 16th, and I'm starting this book, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony de over again because I was just starting and I think there's some important things in the setup, so I'd like to start again. So, Anthony de All the Light We Cannot See. It was published in 2014. On the facing page, there are two quotes. The first one is from The Burning of Saint Malo. In the Journal of Historical Review, it was printed in the winter of 1981. In August 1944, the historic walled city of Saint Malo, the brightest jewel of the Emerald Coast of Brittany, France, was almost totally destroyed by fire. Of the 865 buildings within the walls, only 182 remain standing, and all were damaged to some degree. Philip Beck. Second quote is from Joseph Goebbels. It would not have been possible for us to take power or to use it in the ways we have without the radio. Book 0. 7th of August, 1944. Leaflets. At dusk, they pour from the sky. They blow across the ramparts, turn cartwheels over rooftops, flutter into the ravines between houses. Entire streets swirl with them, flashing white against the cobbles. Urgent message to the inhabitants of this town, they say. Depart immediately to open country. The tide climbs. The moon hangs small and yellow and gibbous. On the rooftops of beachfront hotels to the east and in the gardens behind them, a half dozen American artillery units drop incendiary rounds into the mouths of mortars. Bombers. They cross the channel at midnight. There are 12, and they're named for songs. Stardust and Stormy Weather and In the Mood and Pistol Packin' Mama. The sea glides along far below, spattered with the countless chevrons of whitecaps. Soon enough, the navigators can discern the low moonlit lumps of islands ranged along the horizon. France. Intercoms crackle. Deliberately, almost lazily, the bombers shed altitude. Threads of red light ascend from anti-air emplacements up and down the coast. Dark, ruined ships appear, scuttled or destroyed, one with its bow shorn away, a second flickering as it burns. On an outermost island, panicked sheep run zigzagging between rocks. Inside each airplane, a bombardier peers through an aiming window and counts to 20. 4, 5, 6, 7. To the bombardiers, the walled city on its granite headland drawing ever closer looks like an unholy tooth, something black and dangerous, a final abscess to be lanced away. The girl. In a corner of the city, inside a tall, narrow house at number 4 Rue Vauboral, on the 6th and highest floor, a sightless 16-year-old named Marie-Laure Leblanc kneels over a low table covered entirely with a model. The model is a miniature of the city she kneels within and contains scale replicas of the hundreds of houses and shops and hotels within its walls. There's the cathedral with its perforated spire, and the bulky old Château de Saint Malo, and row after row of seaside mansions studded with chimneys. A slender wooden jetty, arcs out from a beach called the Plage de Mole. A delicate reticulated atrium vaults over the seafood market. Minute benches, the smallest, no larger than apple seeds, dot the tiny public square. Marie-Laure runs her fingertips along the centimeter-wide parapet, crowning the ramparts, drawing an uneven star shape around the entire model. She finds the opening atop the walls where 4 ceremonial cannons point to sea. Bastion de la Hollande, she whispers, and her fingers walk down a little staircase. Rue de Cordier, Rue Saint-Cartier. In a quarter of the room stand 2 galvanized buckets filled to the rim with water. Fill them up, her great-uncle has taught her, whenever you can. The bathtub on the 3rd floor, too. Who knows when the water will go out again? Her fingers travel back to the cathedral spire, south to the gate of Dinan. All evening she has been marching her fingers around the model, waiting for her great-uncle Etienne, who owns the house, who went out the previous night while she slept and who has not returned. And now it is night again, another revolution of the clock, and the whole block is quiet, and she cannot sleep. She can hear the bombers when they're 3 miles away, a mounting static. The hum inside a seashell. When she opens the bedroom window, the noise of the airplanes becomes louder. Otherwise, the night is dreadfully silent. No engines, no voices, no clatter, no sirens, no footfalls on the cobbles, not even gulls. Just a high tide 1 block away and 6 stories below, lapping at the base of the city walls. And something else. Oh, something rattling softly, very close. She eases open the left-hand shutter and runs her fingers up the slats of the right. A sheet of paper has lodged there. She holds it to her nose. It smells of fresh ink, gasoline maybe. The paper is crisp. It has not been outside long. Marie-Laure hesitates at the window in her stocking feet. Her bedroom behind her. Seashells arranged along the top of the armoire, pebbles along the baseboards. Her cane stands in the corner. Her big Braille novel waits face down on the bed. The drone of the airplanes grows. The boy. 5 streets to the north, a white-haired 18-year-old German private named Werner Pfenning wakes to a faint staccato hum. Little more than a purr. Flies tapping at a far-off window pane. Where is he? The sweet, slightly chemical scent of gun oil, the raw wood of newly constructed shell crates, the mothballed odor of old bedspreads. He's in the hotel. Of course. Hôtel d'Abeille. The Hotel of Bees. Still night. Still early. From the direction of the sea come whistles and booms. Flak is going up. An anti-air corporal hurries down the corridor, heading for the stairwell. "Get to the cellar," he calls over his shoulder, and Werner switches on his field light, rolls his blanket into his duffel, and starts down the hall. Not so long ago, the Hotel of Bees was a cheerful address with bright blue shutters on its facade and oysters on ice in its cafe and Breton waiters in bow ties polishing glasses behind its bar. It offered 21 guest rooms, commanding sea views, and a lobby fireplace as big as a truck. Parisians on weekend holidays would drink aperitifs here, and before them, the occasional emissary from the Republic, ministers and vice ministers and abbots and admirals, and in the centuries before them, windburned corsairs, killers, plunderers, raiders, seamen. But before that, before it was ever a hotel at all, 5 centuries ago, it was the home of a wealthy privateer who gave up raiding ships to study bees in the pastures outside Saint-Malo, scribbling in notebooks and eating honey straight from combs. The crests above the door lintels still have bumblebees carved into the oak. The ivy-covered fountain in the courtyard is shaped like a hive. Werner's favorites are 5 faded frescoes on the ceiling of the grandest upper rooms, where bees as big as children float against the blue backdrops, big lazy drones and workers with diaphanous wings, where, above a hexagonal bathtub, a single 9-foot-long queen with multiple eyes and a golden furred abdomen curls across the ceiling. Over the past 4 weeks, the hotel has become something else, a fortress. A detachment of Austrian airmen has boarded up every window, overturned every bed. They've reinforced the entrance, packed the stairwells with crates of artillery shells. The hotel's 4th floor, where garden rooms with French balconies open directly onto the ramparts, has become home to an aging, high-velocity anti-air gun called an 88 that can fire 21.5-pound shells 9 miles. Her Majesty, the Austrians call their cannon. And for the past week, these men have tended to it the way worker bees might tend to a queen. They fed her oils, repainted her barrel, lubricated her wheels. They've arranged sandbags at her feet like offerings. The royal Acht, a deadly monarch meant to protect them all. Werner is in the stairwell, halfway to the ground floor, when the 88 fires twice in quick succession. It's the first time he's heard the gun at such close range, and it sounds as if the top half of the hotel has torn off. He stumbles and throws his arms over his ears. The walls reverberate all the way down to the foundations, then back up. Werner can hear the Austrians 2 floors up scrambling, reloading, and the receding screams of both shells as they hurtle above the ocean already 2 or 3 miles away. One of the soldiers, he realizes, is singing. Or maybe it's more than one. Maybe they're all singing. 8 Luftwaffe men, none of whom will survive the hour, singing a love song to their queen. Werner chases the beam of his field light through the lobby. The big gun detonates a 3rd time, and glass shatters somewhere close by, and torrents of soot rattle down the chimney, and the walls of the hotel toll like a struck bell. Werner worries that the sound will knock the teeth from his gums. He drags open the cellar door and pauses a moment, visions swimming. "This is it?" he asks. "They're really coming?" But who is there to answer? Saint-Malo. Up and down the lanes, the last unevacuated townspeople wake. Groans, sigh. Up and down the lanes, the last unevacuated townspeople wake, groan, sigh. Spinsters, prostitutes, men over 60, procrastinators, collaborators, disbelievers, drunks, nuns of every order, the poor, the stubborn, the blind. Some hurry to bomb shelters. Some tell themselves it is merely a drill. Some linger to grab a blanket or a prayer book or a deck of playing cards. D-Day was 2 months ago. Cherbourg has been liberated. Caen, liberated. Reims, too. Half of Western France is free. In the east, the Soviets have retaken Minsk. The Polish Home Army is revolting in Warsaw. A few newspapers have become bold enough to suggest that the tide has turned. But not here. Not this last citadel at the edge of the continent, this final German strongpoint on the Breton coast. Here, people whisper, the Germans have renovated 2 kilometers of subterranean corridors under the medieval walls. They have built new defenses, new conduits, new escape routes, underground complexes of bewildering intricacy. Beneath the peninsular fort of La Cité, across the river from the old city, there are rooms of bandages, rooms of ammunition, even an underground hospital, or so it is believed. There is air conditioning, a 200,000-liter water tank, a direct line to Berlin. There are flame-throwing booby traps, a net of pillboxes with periscopic sights. They've stockpiled enough ordnance to spray shells into the sea all day, every day, for a year. Here, they whisper, are 1,000 Germans ready to die, or 5,000, maybe more. Saint-Malo. Water surrounds the city on 4 sides. Its links to the rest of France is tenuous. A causeway, a bridge, a spit of sand. We're Malouins first, say the people of Saint-Malo. Bretons next, French, if there's anything left. In stormy light, its granite glows blue. At the highest tides, the sea creeps into basements at the very center of town. At the lowest tides, the barnacled ribs of 1,000 shipwrecks stick out above the sea. For 3,000 years, this little promontory has known sieges, but never like this. A grandmother lifts a fussy toddler to her chest. A drunk, urinating in an alley outside Saint-Séverin, a mile away, plucks a sheet of paper from the hedge. Urgent message to the inhabitants of this town, it says. Depart immediately to open country. Anti-air batteries flash on the outer islands, and the big German guns inside the old city send another round of shells howling over the sea. And 380 Frenchmen, imprisoned on an island fortress called National, a quarter mile off the beach, huddled in a moonlit courtyard, peering up. 4 years of occupation and the roar of oncoming bombers is the roar of what? Deliverance? Extirpation? The clack-clack of small arms fire. The gravelly snare drums of flak. A dozen pigeons roosting on the cathedral spire cataract down its length and wheel out over the sea. Number 4 Rue Vauboral. Marie-Laure Leblanc sits alone in her bedroom, smelling a leaflet she cannot read. Sirens wail. She closes the shutters and relatches the window. Every second the airplanes draw closer. Every second is a second lost. She should be rushing downstairs. She should be making for the corner of the kitchen, where a little trap door opens into the cellar full of dust and mouse-chewed rugs and ancient trunks long unopened. Instead, she returns to the table at the foot of the bed and kneels beside the model of the city. Again, her fingers find the outer ramparts, the Bastion de la Hollande, the little staircase leading down. In the window, right here, in the real city, a woman beats her rugs every Sunday. From this window here, a boy once yelled, "Watch where you're going. Are you blind?" The window panes rattle in their little housings. The anti-air guns unleash another volley. The earth rotates just a little bit further. Beneath her fingertips, the miniature Rue d'Estrée intersects the miniature Rue Vaboral. Her fingers turn right. They skim doorways. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many times has she done this? Number 4, the tall, derelict bird's nest of a house owned by her great-uncle Etienne, where she's lived for 4 years, where she kneels on the 6th floor, alone, as a dozen American bombers roar toward her. She presses inward on the tiny front door, and a hidden catch releases, and the little house lifts up and out of the model. In her hands, it's about the size of one of her father's cigarette boxes. Now the bombers are so close that the floor starts to throb under her knees. Out in the hall, the crystal pendants of the chandelier, suspended above the stairwell, chime. Marie-Laure twists the chimney of the miniature house 90 degrees. Then she slides off 3 wooden panels that make up its roof and turns it over. A stone drops into her palm. It's cold, the size of a pigeon's egg, the shape of a teardrop. Marie-Laure clutches the tiny house in one hand and the stone in the other. The room feels flimsy, tenuous. Giant fingertips seem about to punch through the walls. "Papa?" she whispers. Cellar. Beneath the lobby of the Hotel of Bees, a corsair's cellar has been hacked out of the bedrock. Behind crates and cabinets and pegboards of tools, the walls are bare granite. 3 massive hand-hewn beams hauled here from some ancient Breton forest and craned into place centuries ago by teams of horses hold up the ceiling. A single light bulb casts everything in a wavering shadow. Werner Pfeffing sits on a folded chair in front of a workbench, checks his battery level, and puts on headphones. The radio is a steel-cased 2-way transceiver with a 1.6 meter band antenna. It enables him to communicate with a matching transceiver upstairs with 2 other anti-air batteries inside the walls of the city and with the underground garrison command across the river mouth. The transceiver hums as it warms. A spotter reads coordinates into the headpiece, and an artilleryman repeats them back. Werner rubs his eyes. Behind him, confiscated treasures are crammed to the ceiling. Rolled tapestries, grandfather clocks, armoires, and giant landscape paintings crazed with cracks. On a shelf opposite Werner sit 8 or 9 plaster heads, purpose of which he cannot guess. The massive staff sergeant, Frank Volkheimer, comes down the narrow wooden stairs and ducks his head beneath the beams. He smiles gently at Werner and sits in a tall-backed armchair, upholstered in golden silk, with his rifle across his huge thighs, where it looks little more than a baton. Werner says, "It's starting?" Volkheimer nods. He switches off his field light and blinks his strangely delicate eyelashes in the dimness. "How long will it last?" "Not long. We'll be safe down here." The engineer, Bernd, comes last. He's a little man with mousy hair and misaligned pupils. He closes the cellar door behind him and bars it and sits halfway down the wooden staircase with a damp look on his face. Fear or grit, it's hard to say. With the door shut, the sounds of sirens soften. Above them, the ceiling light bulb flickers. Water, thinks Werner. I forgot water. A second anti-air battery fires from a distant corner of the city, and then the 88 upstairs goes again, stentorian, deadly, and Werner listens to the shells scream into the sky. Cascades of dust hiss out of the ceiling. Through his headphones, Werner can hear the Austrians upstairs still singing. Auf der Wolde, da schijnt de zon al so gulda. Volkheimer picks sleepily at a stain on his trousers. Bernd blows into his cupped hands. The transceiver crackles. The transceiver crackles with wind speeds, air pressure, trajectories. Werner thinks of home. Frau Elena bent over his little shoes, double knotting each lace. Stars wheeling past a dormer window. His little sister Jutta, with a quilt around her shoulders and a radio earpiece trailing from her left ear. 4 stories up, the Austrians clap another shell into the smoking breach of the 88 and double-check the transverse and clamp their ears as the gun discharges. But down here, Werner hears only the radio voices of his childhood. The goddess of history looked down to earth. Only through the hottest fires can purification be achieved. He sees a forest of dying sunflowers. He sees a flock of blackbirds explode out of a tree. Bombs away. 17, 18, 19, 20. Now the sea races beneath the aiming windows, now rooftops. 2 smaller aircraft line the corridor with smoke, and the lead bomber salvos its payload, and 11 others follow suit. The bombs fall diagonally. The bombers rise and scramble. The underside of the sky goes black with flecks. Marie-La's great-uncle, locked with several hundred others inside the gates of Fort National, a quarter of a mile offshore, squints up and thinks, locusts. And an Old Testament proverb comes back to him from some cobwebbed hour of parish school. The locusts have no king, yet all of them go out in ranks. A demonic horde, upended sacks of beans, 100 broken rosaries. There are thousands of metaphors, and all of them are inadequate. 40 bombs per aircraft, 480 altogether. 72,000 pounds of explosives. An avalanche descends onto the city, a hurricane. Teacups drift off shelves, paintings slip off nails. In another quarter second, the sirens are inaudible. Everything is inaudible. The roar becomes loud enough to separate membranes in the middle ear. The anti-air guns let fly their final shell. 12 bombers fold back unharmed into the blue night. On the 6th floor of number 4, Rue Vauboral, Marie-La crawls beneath her bed and clamps the stone and little model house to her chest. In the cellar beneath the Hotel of Bees, the single bulb in the ceiling winks out. That concludes the reading for today.